So him going up against the Cody Rhodes or him going up against the Kenny Omega, Adam Handmaid.
Okay. You know what? You said one right there. Kenny Omega. That is one. We forget because he's in the tag team right now. I would absolutely pay $100 to watch Brock Lesnar versus Kenny Omega. Welcome, everybody, to the Ring Generals podcast. My name is Nick Nenad, and alongside me today is the RKJ Man.
Let's talk that talk, y'all. Hypocritical Nick. It's two of America's most wanted tonight, baby.
We haven't done one of these in a long time, RKJ. It's just me and you shooting the shit, talking wrestling. I love it. Long time since we did our last podcast. We were excited today to discuss so many good topics. We have Brock Lesnar not signed with WWE anymore. What does that mean for wrestling? What does that mean for UFC? Mauro, Renee Young, they're gone from WWE. Some shocking news right there. We'll discuss that. Roman Reigns is back and different than ever before. He is finally a heel, as you will see on your screen as well. We have a little ticker here. We have a couple of, we're showing you what we're going to discuss. And I also have put the time code for, maybe if you just don't like the discussion we're in right now, skip forward if you want to hear about Renee or Mauro. Obviously, we're not filming this live, so you can do whatever you want. So we're hooking you guys up there. Watch what you want to watch. But of course, before you do any of that, right now, like, subscribe, and comment. Take it away, RKJ.
Man, it's the best damn podcast in all of YouTube. Forget wrestling, all of YouTube. This is the best damn podcast. You know why? Because we have so much great content for you guys right now. We can go all the way back from our first podcast to all of our various interviews when we were drunken in IHOP to today. It's fantastic, okay? So what are you doing? I need you to like, I need you to comment, and most importantly, I need you to subscribe and tap the bell for notifications. Why? Because as soon as it comes up, guess what? You get it. It's fantastic.
I don't know if you guys see my fingers, but in one of these corners somewhere, I don't know where, there's our little logo. Push that to subscribe. And of course, like I always say, it helps us get more out into the ether of YouTube. It does really help us. It's not just some BS liking and commenting like an Instagram and stuff like that. It actually does help us. So please do that. And then thank you to anybody that is subscribed to us. We finally have reached 100 subscribers as well. We thank everybody that is following us and looks forward to our content every week. But RKJ, let's get to that content. Enough for this promotion.
Subscribers, bro.
Let's do it on this podcast right here. But yes, do
right now.
Do all that. All right, enough of that BS. Agent again, and this has tilted the MMA world. This has tilted.
Cut out a little bit.
Here's what I was saying. This tilted the MMA world out. It tilted the wrestling world. What is going to happen with Brock Lesnar? RKJ, what is your hunch? What do you think this means that he's a free agent? Do you think this is a big deal, or do you think it's more of just WWE and Brock not agreeing with stuff right now?
I think this is the fact of the matter being that Vince McMahon is using the pandemic for his financial gain. I think he went to Brock Lesnar and he said, hey, look, I can't pay you this amount of money. And Brock's like, I want this amount of money. And they couldn't come to an agreement. And they said, okay, when we need each other, then we'll hit each other back up again. Look, the fact of the matter is this. If I'm Dana White right now, I'm calling Brock Lesnar as fast as possible to get matchups with Daniel Cormier or John Jones. Or I thought about this. Nobody's talking about this matchup. Francis Ngannou. That's that I want to see. I want to see the killer Francis Ngannou versus Brock Lesnar. Those are matchups I would definitely pay big bucks to see. Brock Lesnar is right up there with Conor McGregor as being one of those top main draws for UFC. The facts are there. He is one of the top sellers for UFC all time. So the fact of the matter is this: if you're Dana White, why not sign Brock Lesnar to a couple of matches? And Brock Lesnar, you might be saying, well, Brock Lesnar doesn't necessarily want to do it. But if you throw $5, $6, $7, $8, $10 million at him for a couple of fights, then he's got to do it. He's got to do that. He's a businessman just like everybody else. So I totally agree. The fact of the matter being, Brock Lesnar needs to find himself doing something with MMA if he's not doing something with WWE right now.
Yeah, well, he's definitely not doing stuff with WWE. He is officially not an employee. That was, I believe it was broken by WrestleVotes first. Dave Meltzer was also on that case as well, like he usually is. But yeah, I'll talk a little bit about the MMA version of Brock Lesnar. You know, I do not expect him to accept a fight, but I think there are a couple ways, and you didn't mention them, RKJ. Of course, a fight with Jon Jones. I think that would be perfect on both ends because obviously Jon Jones versus Brock Lesnar, although would have been better maybe like 5 years ago at heavyweight, still is a damn good fight and a damn good draw. I expect Jon Jones to win that fight, but it's kind of perfect scenario for Jon Jones and Brock. Brock goes into a fight. He makes a ton of money. He doesn't really have to care if he wins. We all know how competitive he is, but you know, he's facing one of the best of all time, maybe the best of all time in the ring. And for Jon Jones, you have his first heavyweight fight be against a sort of beatable star. Brock Lesnar is in his 40s. He's not the same Brock Lesnar he was 10 years ago when he was winning the heavyweight title. And Jon Jones still looks like he's in the prime of his career in a lot of ways. So I would love that fight. I think the fight with Daniel Cormier you mentioned would be great. Daniel Cormier has come out and said that he's not going to fight MMA anymore, but I think a super fight with Brock Lesnar that goes back to their wrestling days and goes back to their friendship would be awesome. The other one being thrown out there is possibly Bellator going after Brock. And the only reason that's a possibility is because Fedor Emelianenko, that was a fight way back in the history of MMA that would have been that super fight. It would have been like that John Cena Rock type of fight way back in the early 2000s when Brock was first coming in. Brock was in a company called Pride. So was Fedor. Fedor obviously coming from Russia. Brock Lesnar, the all commit. So it's more of a, you know, two old guys fighting, right? It wouldn't be as good as Jon Jones or Daniel Cormier, but there is the possibility of Brock fighting somebody like that or going to Bellator and maybe fighting for their championship, something like that. But
who was that guy you just mentioned?
Fedor Emelianenko. He's one of the best heavyweights of all time. He's older now. He's probably around the same age as Brock, but he's still murking people at 40. So it would be an interesting fight, and it would definitely help out Bellator. But I don't think that's realistic compared to UFC re-signing him on.
Look, let me be honest with you. I'm going to say this right now. I never heard of the man before in my life, okay? And the fact of the matter is this: as a casual MMA fan, not even a UFC fan, just a casual MMA fan who watches fights that actually interest me, what sounds better? Brock Lesnar versus Jon Jones or a guy I've never heard of? I think Brock Lesnar versus Jon Jones or Daniel Cormier or Francis Ngannou sounds a whole lot better than this guy over here that we've never heard of. I respect him and I respect what he's done in Bellator or wherever he's done it at. But the fact of the matter is this: UFC is the MMA, it's MMA's biggest promotion, and he needs to go there if he's not going to be doing anything for WWE, which he is not right now because he's a free agent.
Yeah, no, I mean, it would definitely be interesting if he came back to MMA, considering that I thought that road had cleared, I think last year when he was saying that he wasn't going to come back. But you never know. Like you said, Dana White throws some money at him. You're in a pandemic. Although I would like to see fans if Brock Lesnar comes back, and I bet you Brock Lesnar wants that piece of that gate as well. We know how Brock is stingy about his money for sure.
If the buy rates are high enough, if you could do 2 million buys, 2.5 million buys for this, and you become the highest rated pay-per-view in all of UFC history, then that more than enough makes up for the gate there. And then also a couple things. Number one, are we sure both of these guys, whether it be Jon Jones or Brock Lesnar, can pass a piss test at this point in the game?
You know what? It'd be definitely a lot harder for Brock Lesnar. And here's the thing that people have to remember. I'll bring up something that's currently going on in the MMA world. With Anthony Rumble Johnson, who is returning after a couple years of not being a professional fighter. When you become a UFC fighter, you have to go through 6 months of USADA testing before. So even if Brock did want to do one of these UFC fights, he'd have to wait 6 months and he'd have to start getting into the testing right now. So this is not something that's going to happen probably during this pandemic time. That we probably will have fans by the time Brock Lesnar would come back. And so that is something for people to learn about. We're just discussing this right now because it's the news. Now, let's turn the tables, RKJ. What happens? Like, do you think there's any chance he does New Japan or AEW, or do you think he kind of just waits for WWE to call him back or the UFC?
I don't think he does New Japan because he'll have to be away from his wife and his kids. And he seems to be very family oriented, which I can respect that about Brock Lesnar. As far as AEW goes, I mean, AEW can throw money at him, but we saw it last year. AEW threw money at Edge, and Edge just wound up going to Vince McMahon and got a better deal. So the fact of the matter is this: anytime AEW is mentioned, Vince McMahon butts gets tight. His butt automatically gets tight anytime AEW is mentioned around any of his major superstars. And you all heard that rumor. Apparently, Dave Meltzer speculated and basically said that everybody in the WWE, besides Roman Reigns, has inquired
that's true.
about going to AEW. So the fact of the matter is this: do I see Brock Lesnar going to AEW? No. But I do see an offer being made in the future. I do see something for a limited amount of dates. But I just don't think Brock Lesnar and AEW fits. I mean, when I heard that John Cena was possibly a free agent a couple months ago, I lost my mind because I thought that would have been the perfect signing for AEW. Unfortunately, that's not true. But I just don't think getting these guys, these major superstars from WWE, like a Randy Orton, a John Cena, a Brock Lesnar, a Roman Reigns, a Seth Rollins, is going to be really hard for AEW because Vince can always counter them with better money. And Chris Jericho said the same thing, too. He's got $2 billion in the bank.
Yeah, no, Tony Khan and Shad Khan got a lot of money in the bank too. I mean, they got their hands in a lot of things right now that make them a lot of money. So I will contest that I think the Khans could almost throw equally as amount of money if they really wanted Brock. I do agree with you, though. It doesn't really fit, right? AEW is more about kind of independent wrestling. Yes, they have like bringing up new stars. They have brought back older stars that are now in prime positions. But I think that's more for familiarity for fans that may not watch wrestling all the time. If you see a bunch of people you've never heard of all the time, why watch, right? It's kind of one of those things that that's just what happens sometimes. But Brock Lesnar, it would be interesting, but is there really even a fight for him anywhere? Like, who could he possibly go up against that you'd really it would really tip the scales?
Would it be credible? I mean,
who would it be?
I can't think of anybody. I mean, Brody Lee possibly.
But you could do that, but nobody's clamoring for Brock Lesnar versus Brody. That's the thing. Maybe in WWE, if they would have built it up enough when Luke Harper was at his height with the Wyatt family, he could have obviously been a star. He is a star in AEW right now. He's doing a lot of good things. But yeah, I see that part of it too. Brock Lesnar doesn't fit anywhere because AEW just doesn't have those, those real big stars. Now, maybe some with Lance Archer, maybe something with Brian Cage, possibly. But again, those aren't necessarily dream fights. Lance Archer and Brian Cage are still unknown to a lot of kind of low key wrestling fans. So, I think they would really need to build somebody up, and I just don't see that happening in Brock Lesnar's career span.
I will say this though, Brock Lesnar towards the end of his career in WWE. Recently, he expressed interest in wanting to face more smaller guys. We saw it with AJ Styles, Finn Balor, and of course Daniel Bryan. So him going up against the Cody Rhodes or him going up against the Kenny Omega, Adam Handmaid.
Okay. You know what? You said one right there. Kenny Omega. That is one. We forget because he's in the tag team right now. I would absolutely pay $100 to watch Brock Lesnar versus Kenny Omega. I absolutely would pay. Take my money if that is. There it is. AEW, if you want it to happen, it's Kenny Omega versus Brock Lesnar. Thank you for bringing that up, RKJ. I hadn't thought of that.
And I want the Brock Lesnar from 2004 when he was fighting Kurt Angle in 60-minute Iron matches. I don't want to see the 2-minute Brock Lesnar, okay? All right? I want to see the 60-minute Iron Man match against Kurt Angle, Brock Lesnar.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Or at least see some, I remember him kind of coming out for a couple matches versus some guys in WWE. He did some work for Seth Rollins. He's done some work for Roman Reigns in the past. I'm kind of forgetting some other guys just right now. But nonetheless, if AEW, Kenny Omega, and you got to do it quick because they're both getting a little older. Well, Brock already is older, but Brock's like a cyborg. He's not going anywhere. He'll still be able to fight in his 50s and look the same.
That
You know what I'm
man's
saying? Yeah, he's one of those superhuman type guys. Let's switch topics completely here to, well, no, not completely, but a couple people, they're also leaving WWE. Much to the surprise of a lot of people last few weeks. Renee Young, we all know her. She's been part of WWE for so long now. Kind of that almost like female figurehead besides Stephanie McMahon. Kind of that female you think of when you're not thinking about wrestlers in WWE, you think of Renee Young. And then, of course, and this is the one that really shocked me and disappointed me, was Mauro Ranallo. We all know he's gone through a lot in his life, and that may have contributed to what is going on here with him leaving NXT. But I personally think that NXT, this is a big loss for them because I don't think there's any way you can replicate Mauro Ranallo. You can't really replicate Renee Young either, but Mauro is such a special human being and a special, talented person. RKJ, you know how kind of beat up I am about Mauro leaving. What are your thoughts on Mauro leaving?
I thought he was the best announcer WWE had since Jim Ross. I mean, the fact of the matter is this: Mauro Ranallo was so great because he could just captivate, an audience. He can captivate anybody who is watching a match. And of course, I love his pop culture references and the fact he referenced hip hop, which is so great. Just how excited he was. You just don't see it from commentators today. A lot of people call them a spinoff of Michael Cole. I just see that charisma, from anybody else other than Mauro Ranallo. And then, to see how he was treated, whether it's the JBL situation or Corey Graves going into business for himself, you have to wonder if those things piled up on him. A man who's already fragile as it is with his mental health. He's had multiple issues. Plus, he's doing all that other work on the side with the Showtime situation and boxing. I mean, the guy can do whatever he wants. And he's doing WWE because he's passionate and he loves it. And, to kind of get treated and be disrespected like that from your coworkers, that wears on you physically. So I'm glad he came back to the company. He got an easier role in NXT, but then Corey Graves disrespected him last year. And we don't need to go into Corey Graves and what I've called him in the past because I don't want to say it now.
It's old school stuff. That's some old school stuff right there.
That's some old school stuff. So go ahead and look at it on our old school stuff on the Ring Generals podcast. Okay. I called him a beta male way back in the day. Actually, I called him something worse. Female dog. But yeah, it's just one of those situations where I'm very sad to see Mauro Ranallo go. And I have no clue what he's going to do. I guess he wants to advocate for mental health, which I can obviously respect. But I just want Mauro Ranallo to be happy and do whatever the hell he wants to do. He's 50. And it seems like, you know what I'm saying? It seems like he's a lot younger than that. He takes care of his body. He's in good shape. I want him to be happy and do whatever he wants to do. And honestly, I'll be okay if he just comes in occasionally for big matches in NXT TakeOver, kind of like Jim Ross did before he jumped over to AEW. He was coming in on big matches at WrestleMania. I would love for Mauro Ranallo to do that, and I think that can happen in the future.
Yeah, no, I agree with a lot what you just said right there. I do think there is still an opportunity for him in NXT. I don't think this is his last time appearing in NXT. It's just NXT is going to be so much different without Mauro. You mentioned it. There's a lot of Michael Cole clones, and that's not necessarily a good thing because Michael Cole is a great broadcaster. He's a great announcer, but he's just, he's not the same as the Jim Rosses, the Jerry Lawlers, the Mauro Ranellos. You can go into the sports world with these two, the Vin Scullys, the
Kevin Harlan.
The Kevin Harlans, the so many others, right? Al Michaels. There's so many others. There's just these guys that are like, they're the shit, right? Like Michael Cole is great, but he's kind of become a yes man a little bit in WWE. Not a little bit, a lot. And he's kind of sold himself out. And a lot of these guys, it's the whole scripted thing. And Mauro kind of seems unscripted. JR, obviously, with AEW is unscripted. That's the better way to go. Announcers should not be scripted. And when they are scripted, it sounds fake, it sounds hokey, and it sounds dumb. And I'll say that to the end of my days because I'm a broadcaster myself, and I've always hated unauthenticity. So Mauro leaving NXT, it's definitely going to affect NXT. And I don't think there's anybody that can replace him. And I do think that for takeovers, they need to bring Mauro back, or it's going to hurt them. I know a lot of people say this kind of stuff. Anytime anybody leaves WWE, we just asked it about Brock Lesnar. Could Mauro go to AEW? I think AEW would be a perfect fit for the exact same reason. Big matches. Not him being a broadcaster. They already have Tony Schiavone. They already have Excalibur. They already have JR. That's absolutely enough. And those guys are all fantastic. But I could absolutely see Mauro being able to commentate an AEW match here, an NXT match there, a big-time boxing match here, anything else, even an MMA match. I believe he does some Bellator as well. So that's what I want to see. I want to see Mauro do what he wants to do. He's a great human being. He's been through a lot in his life. And I don't think WWE should necessarily dictate what he does. I'm excited to see what he does in the future, but it sucks for NXT specifically because I think it's a big loss.
Now, here's the thing, Nick. Me and you are both broadcasters. We did games at our college, so we know how it is and how difficult it is. It's not easy to do what we do and what Mauro Ranallo does. But how difficult do you think it is when you got a 75-year-old man screaming into your headset, what in the hell to say?
Well, here's the thing, though. I don't think that happens with NXT, though, because it's Triple H. I don't think Triple H says anything in that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think the one thing Mauro had with NXT was that Triple H let him be authentic, which he also does with all the wrestlers. That's why NXT comes off so awesome. And you know, they shouldn't have ever competed with AEW, but that's a whole other thing, and that might have been one of the reasons Mauro ended up leaving. A lot of unnecessary pressure for a show that was already good. But yeah, I mean, you're talking about everybody else. It's pandemonium. It's a pandemic in itself when you're on the mic.
A pandemic in the damn ear. That's what it is. It's a pandemic
in the ear.
In the damn ear where you got to hear a 75-year-old man screaming, make sure you say medical facility, pal. It's such good shit. It drives you crazy. So personally, I just don't want to deal with that. I would hate to deal with that. I would walk off. I'll be like, I don't care how much money you're paying me. I'll go announce somewhere else. I can't deal with that.
I would be like, I hate you, Vince, and I hate this. And I'm going somewhere else because there's other options now. I mean, there's even Impact. Like, there are better options than WWE. AEW almost has got 1 million views this last Wednesday on a show that I couldn't have given a shit less about. Like, there was nothing interesting about that show this last Wednesday. I get it. You don't want to hurt the stars, right? Jericho, Moxley in easy positions. But still, like, the fact that they're almost drawing 1 million for shows that don't even matter, I'm saying, man, WWE ain't the only thing in town right now, and then Mauro should know that too. And you got Impact, you got New Japan, you got AEW if you want to go somewhere else. And of course, he does all the boxing as well.
I think we need to be careful with the whole somebody going to AEW, and we're going to talk about another person in a moment who a lot of people are speculating could go to AEW. I think you got to be careful with that because you don't want to become WWE 2.0, WCW 2.0, TNA 3.0, because TNA definitely used to do that all the time. It seemed like the moment somebody left, they went to go sign with TNA. You have to be careful with that, but I've got to be honest with you. I love JR, think he's great, but it's getting to that point, in my opinion, where somebody needs to slowly but surely bring him, take him out. Maybe he can do big matches, and be a part of the company in another role backstage, maybe. But I just think in terms of his commentary, it's up and down, and lately it's been down, to be honest with you. So I would love Mauro Ranallo to come in, but to come in slowly, because you don't want to make JR feel bad. And we all love JR. But once we get to a certain point, we got to admit when our best days are ahead of us, or behind us, excuse me. And I believe JR's best days could be behind him sooner rather than later.
I will say this, though. I do think WWE kind of putting him on the back burner has lifted his spirits a little bit. Like, he seems to genuinely enjoy his job. And so I can appreciate that about him. You know, I can appreciate that he seems to go out there and love what he does every single time. Yes, you know, I agree with you, RKJ. Not on top of his game like he was, say, like 15 years ago. He is 68 years old. He's been through a lot. He's been dealing with Bell's palsy his entire life. But I think he has quite a bit of time to go. You know, we still see Al Michaels doing NFL football. We still saw, Vince Scully was doing baseball up until his late 80s and still sounded the best. You know, so Jim Ross can still do it. He's not going to be getting into any physical altercations or anything like that either. But yeah, I mean, if they do want to fit in Mauro eventually, you know, him and both Tony Schiavone are not in their prime anymore. And I think Mauro could be that future voice. I don't think that happens right now. I would love, though, if Mauro commentated maybe like a Lucha Brothers Young Bucks match or something like that, or one of those crazy ladder tables. You know what I'm saying? Like, I would love if they just brought in Mauro for specific special things that we all would enjoy. They don't need him right now, and he doesn't need them. But I do think AEW and Mauro Ranallo fits better than, like, say, Brock Lesnar and some intensive purposes Renee Young, who we're going to talk about in a second. And we'll transition there. Renee Young has left WWE. She's just letting her contract go. For what we've heard, she has a no-compete clause, probably with wrestling promotions. I don't know if that applies to like ESPN. And she has a contract with Fox, I believe, already. So I think the no compete does mean it's for wrestling. But another big loss, RKJ. Renee, like I mentioned, I thought she was that figure, that kind of second figurehead behind Stephanie McMahon when you thought of women that weren't wrestlers. And I just think it's a sign, it's another sign that just WWE's not doing the right thing, right? Because even when we heard why Renee left, it was a lot just because they're just kind of jacking her around, right? Similar to Jim Ross. Like, they're not using her correctly. They were going to bring Talking Smack back, but she's like, well, it's not the same without Daniel Bryan. You're just putting the same name of a show, but it's not going to be the same, right? And I think she saw WWE kind of messing with her a little bit, and I think she got sick of it. And it's like what a lot of other people do, and it's why when all these guys got released, none of them really cared. Like, yeah, they had bills to pay and all that stuff, but, like, I mean, they all went and are doing better things with other better companies right now. So, RKJ, again, what are your thoughts on Renee? How big of a loss is this for WWE?
Oh, it's a huge loss. She is the female Mean Gene Oakland. She was the first female announcer on Monday Night Raw. And let's talk about that. Let's talk about her being a commentator on Raw. We gave her criticism early on in this podcast, and rightfully so, fair criticism for her commentary. But she should have not been put in that situation. Okay?
Agreed.
I'm a manager, okay, at my job. My job as a manager is to put the people I work with in the best possible situations to succeed. If I know you're weak in something, I shouldn't be putting you there. I should be putting you somewhere else. Yeah. And the fact of the matter is this: you have a Renee Young who's so great at backstage interviews. She can host TV shows. She can do all these other things, but yet you're putting her in a live situation on Monday Night Raw where she's never been at, where the scrutiny is higher than ever. And for what? What? Because you're trying to push the women's evolution movement? I mean, Come on. It's ridiculous. And we called WWE out on that BS. And the fact of the matter is this: she did not even enjoy being on commentary, which is why she had to transition to backstage. And then that got canceled. Okay? Yeah. That got screwed up.
Or RKJ, you know what the problem was, though, right? Pandemic going on in her ear. Like, not only had she never done that before, but, like, the first time she's doing it, Vince McMahon is screaming in her ear when she doesn't even know what you're doing. Like, what they needed to do was maybe have her do a couple main events, right? Like WWE main event, like the show. Maybe bring her on NXT a little bit, right? Have her just do a little bit of announcing, and just bring her on slowly. Have her do the women's classic, the Mae Young Classic. Do that. But what they did was they just threw her into the fire, right? Like we've talked about this before, and you just mentioned it too. And it ended up not working, and it wasn't her fault. I thought near the end, she was a fine announcer. We criticized her in the beginning, and it wasn't really her fault, but it was a glaring issue with WWE. We were watching, and Renee Young seemed to be doing it on the fly, right, which doesn't sound good. But by the time she was at WrestleMania, the WrestleMania that we went to, RKJ, she sounded great. And she was the first woman to be in Saudi Arabia as well, which is a huge deal. Never thought that would happen. And so, like, she accomplished some great things when she was announcer. It just showed how damn good she is at her job of being a broadcaster, a host. And again, it's a big loss for WWE, but I do think, it's better for Renee that she's not stuck with WWE anymore. And I don't care what she does next because I know it will be great, whether it's ESPN, whether it's Fox Sports, whether it's just cable news, or if it's with AEW. Because obviously her husband, Jon Moxley, is the champion right now. It makes all the sense in the world. They do live together. She watches the product clearly. But again, is there really that fit for her right now? It again be bringing in more WWE people. It's a fit, of course, because of how good Renee Young is. But let's bring that in later, right? Like let's let Renee do what she wants here. Maybe she can be a part of it a little bit, but I think she should go on to greater pastures and to the ESPNs and to the Fox Sportses and something like that. Could you agree?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I want to mention this real quickly too as well. Her getting COVID and nobody calling her to check on her besides getting a text message about this is really bad. I wish you would have told us before you would have tweeted that. This is really bad about PR. You can't tell me that wasn't the final nail in the coffin.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point.
You're disrespected like that and you're treated like that. After all the things you do, it's her right, if she wants to go out and tell people, hey, I have COVID. We saw Caleb Braxton say, I had COVID twice. Yeah. So the fact of the matter is this, I don't understand it. The reason why all this happened was because the WWE was not doing what they were supposed to do in the first place, and people got COVID. We just saw AJ, I don't know if you heard about this, AJ Styles just announced last night he had got COVID a month ago. The Rock announced he had got COVID with this family. Now they're on the back half of it. And of course, The Rock doesn't go down to the PC Center, but that shows how crazy anybody can get this. And like I said multiple times, you may not believe in COVID-19, but COVID-19 believes in your ass. Okay. And the fact of the matter is this, she was down and out with the COVID situation. Instead of wishing her well wishes and checking on her every day, sending flowers, doing whatever you can to be a good company, guess what? The fact of the matter is this, they called her and said, hey, why are you tweeting this? We don't want bad PR. That's BS. You're not doing what you need to do, and you're projecting your frustrations, your anger, from the vitriol you're receiving, and rightfully so, onto this woman who's one of your best employees. So do I think she's going to AEW eventually? Yes. Now, the problem is this. Tony Khan's got to figure out a spot for her. Where is she going to go that fits? Where is she going to go in AEW that fits? They got a lot of moving pieces around there, and I don't know where Renee Young fits in AEW, but I figure out Tony Khan can do it. And also, she's on TNT. Now, I talked to you about this before the podcast, Nick. I think Ernie Johnson is getting older. I think Inside the NBA is a great show. And I can see Renee Young, if she's willing to step up and learn more about basketball, could be a perfect fit for a show like Inside the NBA. Yeah. She's a great personality. She's young. She's an attractive woman. And let's be honest, that always helps. So the fact of the matter is this, it will work out with Charles Barkley. The only thing is, will her personality mess with the Charles Barkley, Shaquille O'Neal, and Kenny Smith? I don't know if it's going to mesh. Ernie's perfect for that group of people. Yeah. But I see her doing AEW and then TNT bringing on for some basketball stuff. Not just a stupid sideline recording. I'm talking about in-studio shows, maybe even replacing Ernie Johnson eventually.
Well, yeah, no, and this is what we're talking about. There's a lot of things she can do. Whatever company she does get hired to, we expect her to be at the top of her game. I mean, I could even see her doing sideline NFL, right? Like a Aaron Andrews type spot, right? You could, if she got into that, you mentioned AEW, Jacksonville Jaguars, all that stuff. I'm saying? Like there's a bunch of stuff that she could do. And going back to the WWE thing where they're disrespecting her and they're not treating her like one of their best employees. But I'll tell you this, since this pandemic has started, maybe just throughout like the last year, really since we kind of went to WrestleMania in New York City that long ago. I mean, Renee Young was a top 5 person in WWE, realistically. Like she obviously doesn't get booked the same because she is not really a wrestler. But I mean, when you're like, oh, who are the most talented people in WWE right now? They're on the active roster. Renee Young's top 5. It doesn't matter that she doesn't wrestle. She was top 5. And so WWE not treating her like that, it's their own mistake. But you know what? WWE makes so many damn mistakes now. It's almost comical at this point. And this is one of those ones. This is a big loss for WWE, but they deserve this. And it's different because Mauro Ranallo, they messed around with. NXT didn't deserve that. It affects WWE for sure, but I think Renee Young is going on to, whether it be inside the NBA, First Take, Skip and Shannon, NFL, something like that. I want her to do big time. I want her. She ain't gonna do something low key. She's gonna do something big time, and that's why I said AEW can be on the back burner because AEW, she's better than AEW. Like, as much as I want to say it, she's good, but like she's bigger. She's bigger than AEW, just like she's bigger than WWE.
Well, the AEW thing makes sense because of her husband. The AEW makes sense because she could just sign a deal. Tony Khan can be like, you want to do other stuff? That's fine. You can just do random stuff whenever you want to. And she can sign a perfect deal. Tony Khan's totally down with that. He's got a working relationship with the NWA. We're going to talk about that later. Thunder Rosa and all of them are coming over. Ricky Starks.
Yeah, Tony Schiavone still does Georgia games all the time. He's still hooked up with Georgia football. So clearly, like, AEW is lenient, right? So
as far as Renee Young, man, best wishes to her, and also shout outs to Queen Kathy Kelly too as well. She was also a great announcer too, and they lost her not too long ago too as well. So she was a great announcer too. Those are two big people in terms of that digital part of WWE, that broadcasting announcer part that a lot of people really, really enjoyed, and they're leaving now. So you know what I'm saying? Who else is going to be that next person to step up? Is it going to be Caleb Braxton, Mackenzie Mitchell? Who is it going to be, Nick, that you can see being that top person, the next Renee Young?
It's nobody like Renee Young. It's just like Mauro Ranallo. Can't replace him. Can't replace Renee Young. She's too damn good. Speaking of people you can't replace, let's switch topics here before we get to All Out. Roman Reigns. Obviously, well-publicized issues with WWE over the COVID testing. Wasn't at WrestleMania. Hasn't been with the company. He comes back, and what does he do? Himself a little heel, right? What we've been asking for so long. Not as long as John Cena, but we've been asking for so long for Roman Reigns to be a heel. And he did it. Obviously we wish there would have been different circumstances because of no crowd, all that stuff. WWE waited for the Thunderdome to do this. Probably something we should talk about too. I don't know if we have time on this podcast to talk about that, but
talking about KKK.
Talking about Chris Benoit, Kenny Omega. It's been so much stuff.
It's terrible.
It is awful. Yeah, we're not joking. That's stuff that actually came on the Thunderdome. We ain't just making that stuff up. Like, there's been some terrible stuff. Obviously, I think we can be honest, RKJ. Fuck you for anybody that did that stuff, because I get taking advantage, but like, we don't need to be doing the too far shit like Benoit and the KKK. And I get Kenny Omega if that was fake or real, whatever. But I mean, come on, guys. Why wrestling fans suck so much? Like RKJ, I hate to do this because we're a podcast for the people. At least I think we are. But man, like, I see some dumbass individuals on social media every single week, and anytime I dabble into our Ring General's Twitter account, it's awful. I gotta get off that stuff quick. And it's the same people putting that stuff on the screen. It's the same people that defend WWE because they don't want to be part of the AEW. Like, I'm not gonna get into this, but like, still, I'm just saying.
They're all neckbeards. They're all crazy dudes. You sit in their mom's basement. Okay, they have wrestling. They have the Thunderdome on one screen. They have Pornhub on the other screen. Okay, and that's what they're doing the whole time with their lives. And they have Twitter on the other screen.
And they're watching weird Pornhub shit too, like Step Cousin and shit like that. That's weird stuff.
You got a nasty mind, bro.
I'm just speaking for the neckbeards, man.
Hey, man, you're a nasty individual. What you been watching on Pornhub?
Not that.
Look, man, it doesn't make any sense. I also saw a dude in REM sleep twice. I saw two people in REM sleep on the Thunderdome. They actually put them up, and they were sleeping. And you know how you have the good sleep, too, where the drool is coming out? I could have sworn one of the dudes was drooling to sleep. That's the good sleep right there.
I don't know if the camera just caught this, but I just spit out when I said that was fucking perfect timing. I apologize for that. But, like, I mean, the Thunderdome is the Thunderdome. They're trying it out, right? It's not going to be perfect at the beginning. we'll analyze that in a month or two, right? Like, they'll probably fix it. They'll be able to manage it. They'll be able to manage the crowd reaction being equivalent to all the wrestling. But let's get back to Roman Reigns. RKJ, your thoughts on Roman Reigns finally being a heel and now winning the championship too, like right away?
They said that we'll never see it coming, but I saw it coming as soon as I saw the report that once the Thunderdome came up, Roman Reigns and them were going to come back. Now, I'm obviously very excited about this. The WWE has needed a shot in the booty hole for a very long time. The fact of the matter is this: WWE has been producing its worst content during the pandemic. And how ironic when everything starts coming back. Everything, all the good sports start coming back, and we got the NFL cranked up in about another week or so. WWE actually starts getting good again. It's very ironic and very funny. What took you so long, Vince, to pull the trigger on this? My only issue is this: do you have somebody to face Roman Reigns at WrestleMania? A top superstar who you can push opposite of Roman Reigns? Because we've seen it. When superstars can go heel who are famous, like a Hulk Hogan, or what else? Stone Cold Steve Austin. You always have that counterpart that makes sense. The Rock, perfect counterpart for Stone Cold Steve Austin. Sting, perfect counterpart to a Hollywood Hulk Hogan. You don't have that with Roman Reigns because guess what, Vince? You haven't built enough stars. But I'm happy they made the decision. The problem is you don't have enough credible stars. A lot of people are saying, well, RKJ, I think they're going with The Fiend at WrestleMania. Well, you kind of ruined his character. He lost his championship in a week. And on top of that, we can all go all the way back to Saudi Arabia where he lost his championship too. So it doesn't make any sense. I'm excited about Roman Reigns being a heel. Yeah. And to be honest with you, I think the Thunderdome and not having any fans is better because those fans who were shitting on Roman Reigns just a couple months ago or last year because, oh my God, he's just a generic babyface and Vince is always pushing him down their throats, it's going to be like, oh, hell yeah, he's a heel now. He's a badass. This is the Roman I want. They're going to be cheering him. So you being able to hear those artificial boos, you being able to go on social media and being surprised and hearing the general shock people have for Roman Reigns turning heel, which I think is official. He's aligned himself with Paul Heyman. The way he's talking, the way he's acting, it has to be a heel. It looks like a heel. It smells like a heel. It is a heel in this situation. So I think it's very, very good. But my question always is, okay, who are we putting over? And honestly, who are we putting over at WrestleMania? I've heard reports that Vince McMahon wants Roman Reigns to hold this title until WrestleMania. So the question is this: who can we build up from now until WrestleMania to be credible enough to face Roman Reigns for that Universal Championship and beat him for it? Because you always need to have the perfect counterpart for that heel.
Okay, I have two. And I know you're going to agree with one. Another one you might think a little bit might be far-fetched. Keith Lee is my first guy. I think Keith Lee's been built. He's been being built to be a star since Survivor Series last year. And remember, RKJ, remember that little kind of, Roman Reigns and him had a little moment there too. Maybe a little precursor to pre-pandemic, wrestling. I think the pandemic threw everything off. I'm not really going to blame anything really happening at WrestleMania on WWE. They were put in a terrible situation, whatever. Obviously, the testing, that sucked, all that stuff. And Roman didn't want to be there, and he rightfully shouldn't have been there dealing with leukemia the year before. But I think Keith Lee is that guy that you could build to fight a heel Roman Reigns and beat a heel Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. So Keith Lee is my first one. And then, well, not an easy answer, but obviously babyface heel, The Rock. You could do something crazy like Dwayne Johnson fighting his cousin. Everyone would cheer for The Rock. You have that easy babyface heel thing. That's far-fetched. I think Keith Lee obviously is the one I'm going to go with if I had to put my money on it. But, that little bet on the side is maybe Dwayne Johnson if they could possibly get him to WrestleMania. And again, big enough payday. Rock makes a ton of money now. Doesn't have to do it. But those are my two. Looking super forward to WrestleMania. Keith Lee, realistic. The Rock obviously would work.
Sauce, Alex Zane, and you're watching the Ring General Podcast. Turn this man around. Turn this man around. Subscribe, like, and comment.
But raise a glass in the sky and salute the Ring Generals.
That's right. That's right.